Um, so welcome everyone. I'm Sarah Lubkin. I'm what am I? I'm ESDIS's Science Data Operations Lead, which means that I work with all the DACs and help coordinate efforts between them. And I'm here as part of the User Needs Tiger team. And this is a User Needs Tiger team session. And the User Needs Tiger team's job is really to work with representatives at all the DACs and identify user needs and then champion those needs at ESDIS. So that's why this is a championing user needs during ESDIS evolution session. So next slide, Jennifer. So we have a lot of changes at ESDIS coming up, and the goals of this session are first to understand the reasons why ESDIS is evolving, to learn about these upcoming changes at ESDIS, and then to provide feedback. Next slide. Okay, so this is the welcome. In just a minute, we'll do a quick icebreaker in chat. Oh no, Rama doesn't have access to the notes document. And then Tammy will give an overview of ESDIS, and I'll talk about the key components of ESDIS evolution and our plans moving forward. We'll have Jenny will facilitate questions and answers, and then we have some discussion questions. If discussion doesn't naturally evolve on its own, then we'll break out into groups to give some feedback, and then we'll wrap up. So all of this will take about 90 minutes. Next. So our icebreaker is going to be in chat, and we want you to start with, oh no, one at a time, Jennifer, but that's okay. Just throw in your name and affiliation in chat and let's see who's here. Although I already see Rama and Jessica are here. Leslie from USGS, Nikki from PODAC, Ian from OBDEC, Julia from OpenScapes, Rudy from ASF. So a lot of people who are very familiar with our program, and then a few people who maybe aren't as familiar with the project. So our next icebreaker question, and also just answer in chat, is how do you currently interact with NASA Earth data? Doug stewards it. Yep. And I think we have quite a few stewards in the room.
It's a noble title, Sarah, don't you think?
I think so. Steward of Earth data. It sounds like very official.
You do that too.
I do that too. Yes. And then we have help scientists analyze data, work on workflows that produce data, metadata generation, data stewards, user needs assistance, help others use it, work on metadata, help people find the data they're looking for. So a lot of stewarding and helping, and not so much people using it for science, but that's okay. We will go as we just evolve this session as we need to. And then our final icebreaker question is, what's the biggest challenge in finding, accessing, and using NASA Earth data for your work? I see trainings. Data stewardship, information quality, preservation, data product development. Thanks, Rama. Automating access. Matchups with in situ or station data. Okay. More? Knowing the exact scope. Okay, all great answers. And that helps us get an idea of who's in the room. And now I'm going to turn this over to Tammy for an ESDIS overview.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Tammy Walker. I have been working with the ESDIS project for way too many years to call out by number. And I'm located at the Oak Ridge DAC in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So next slide, please. So I want to talk to you just a little bit about what exactly the ESDIS project is. The ESDIS project is the Earth Science Data and Information System, and we've been operating since 1984. ESDIS is responsible for the processing, the archival, and the distribution of NASA's Earth Science data. Oh, Rama caught a typo in the slide. Okay. It includes satellite and suborbital data, and we're at almost 130 petabytes of free and open data. Next slide. So, as this is comprised of 12 distributed active archive centers, you've already heard about the favorite one of mine, which is the one I work with in Oak Ridge, but each DAC is one of NASA's key data infrastructure pieces that support numerous science and application communities. The DACs wear a lot of different hats. Some of the things that we do are we provide data and metadata stewardship, curation. We provide discipline-specific user support for data sets, services, and tools. We evaluate and address quantitative user feedback provided through various different means, such as the annual American Customer Satisfaction Survey, through the training data from webinars that we provide, as well as the questions and answers that come to us from our users. The DACs support open science and open software. We foster cross-mission and interdisciplinary science. We maintain connections between the data and their user communities. And we serve as the primary contact for current and new mission science teams. And probably the most important thing that DACs do is to work collaboratively with one another to create efficiencies, improve the user experience, and to serve the increasingly diverse set of user communities. Next slide, please. Okay, so what you're looking at now is a diagram of our current Earth fleet. And you can see that we started out in 1999 with the EOS Earth Observing System flagship Terra. And at the tail end of the swirl there, you can see the future missions, which are Earth System Observatory missions that aim for interoperability between not only the science disciplines, but the actual missions themselves. In other words, we're very hopeful that we've gotten to a point where the data between, say, the SBG mission and the AOS mission can work together to help scientists study the Earth. Next slide, please. As you know, Earth is a very complex integrated system. And so our goal is that our data systems will be integrated to facilitate the study of Earth holistically. Next slide, please. So we already told you that we had almost 130 petabytes at the end of FY24. And what we are expecting with the new missions is exponential growth. We expect that by 2029, that number will grow to 600 petabytes. So as this must evolve to meet the needs of our growing community and to support our data holdings. So we're looking for efficiencies wherever possible. And I believe that's my last slide. Can we go to the next slide, please? And Sarah is going to speak with you about what we're doing to meet these changes. Thank you.
I am unmuted, I believe. Jennifer, can we get the next slide? Okay, so Tammy talked about some of the challenges that we're facing. One is, these interoperable missions that have multidisciplinary scopes. And then the other is big data, a lot more data. And so some of the things that we want to do to meet the challenge is to provide a consistent user experience, so that if you are a multidisciplinary user, you're not maybe using accessing data in an ORNL way, and then for the other data you need, you're doing it in a PODAC way, and maybe you also need LPDAC, and each DAC has different tools. So what we are looking at as key components of our evolution are, first of all, a common cloud. So all the data is accessible through the cloud. Unified website. This is the Earth Data website, which is our one-stop place for accessing Earth data and DACs. A common suite of tools. And then, of course, to make this possible, we need ESDIS-wide collaboration. Okay, so next slide. Tammy just showed this slide. I think this is a huge amount of data, and for many users, many of these missions that we've got coming up, SWAT and NISAR already, and the SBG, it's too much data to load to your laptop and process there. And so moving into the cloud allows new capabilities for users. So next slide. So the cloud is going to let us effectively ingest, process, and archive large amounts of data in the most cost-effective, flexible, and scalable way possible. So over the past few years, you've been hearing us talk about moving to a commercial cloud environment, the Earth Data Cloud. At this point, most of the DACs have already migrated most of their data to the cloud, or all their data. There are a few that are still completing the process. And for many of our data users, there's been absolutely no changes in how they work. They're still able to do things exactly as they have in the past. Other data users are now accessing data directly in the cloud. They don't have to download large volumes of data. And it also allows DACs to make data available to their users even when they aren't their archival DAC. So a lot of times when we have these multidisciplinary missions, we have one DAC that is the archival DAC that is responsible for archiving that data and making sure data stewardship and making sure that the metadata is correct and all those aspects of being the stewarding DAC. But maybe it's like a CICE data set that is in NSIDC. NSIDC is taking charge of it because they're the cryosphere DAC, but it's also useful to PODAC, our physical oceanography data users. So PODAC might link to the data in the cloud where NSIDC put there. Next slide. Many of our users are new to working in the cloud, so we wanted to teach them how to make the most of this opportunity. So OpenScapes is a collaboration of the DACs using the OpenScapes framework to empower researchers to use the Earth Data Cloud. Our mentors the DAC mentors worked in teams with users, and they learned to move their workflows to AWS, and they created tutorials, guides, cheat sheets, and provided basically a treasure trove of resources, including the Earth Data Cloud Cookbook and Earth Access, which is a Python library that allows users to search for, download, or stream NASA Earth science data with just a few lines of code. Next slide. So web unification, I think many of you have heard about this already. It's the 2018 21st Century Integrated Digital Experience Act, or IDEA Act, required NASA websites to be Section 508 compliant, have a consistent look and feel, be searchable, secure and mobile friendly, and be free from duplicative information. So as a part of this response, all the ESDIS websites, so all the DAC websites, are moving to earthdatanasa.gov domain by the end of 2026. 3 of our DACs have already moved to the Earth Data website, and I believe that now, instead of going to like cdac.org or whatever, now you would go to cdac.earthdata.gov.nasa.gov. But they are all there, easy to find. Next slide. So with the consolidation of the websites and the shift to an enterprise rather than individual DAC architecture, we needed a place for people to come get help. And so the Earth Data Forum is our site for addressing specific user questions. It's an online collaborative platform used by all the DACs where Earth Data users can come, they can ask questions, they can discuss applications, they can get answers about accessing and using NASA's Earth observation data, and they can interact directly with subject matter experts from the DACs. Okay, so next slide. So Earth Data Forum is one example of a common tool used by all the DACs. So we are looking to, I guess, across the DACs, there are hundreds and hundreds of tools. And in the past, you may use one tool at one DAC, one tool at another DAC. There is more than 90 tools to help users find data. And while each one has a purpose, it can be really confusing to determine which is the right one for you. So ESDIS is looking at our portfolio of tools to determine what are the functions that exist, what are the functions that are still needed, and how can we remove duplication and provide better interoperability, and then fill in the gaps. So maybe instead of 3 DACs working on 3 different discovery tools, they work on one discovery tool and then one tool that fills in a gap. So the goal is to remove duplication, provide better interoperability, and it might be that over time your favorite tool has a different interface or looks different, but the functionality will still be there. Is the goal. So in order to determine the path forward for a more unified set of tools, we're working with the DACs to kind of provide this more consistent more consistent experience across all the DACs. And you may see features that were previously available at one DAC becoming available at other DACs. Another example that's coming soon is the Earth Data Pub DAC accession workflow. Right now, many DACs use Earth Data Pub for publishing their data, but it will be soon used to make data accession requests. So if you want data archived at a DAC, you will go to that one site and put in your request, and it will be addressed. Next slide. Okay, so an important part of making all these changes happen is the DACs collaborating with each other, because if we're all working separately, we can't create efficiencies, we can't improve user experiences, and we can't serve, the DACs would be serving their specialized communities rather than an increasingly diverse user communities. So we have a whole lot of cross-DAC collaborations. I'm going to talk about a few in more detail, but some of the ones that you may be familiar with are OpenScapes, which I just talked about. We have the ESDIS Standard Coordination Office, which reviews standards for our data. And we have the Data Governance Board that is being formed right now, which will include representatives from all the DACs and help us be consistent across the DACs. Some of our other organizations that help us stay consistent. Next slide, Jennifer. Are the DAC Scientists Council. Each DAC has at least one DAC scientist who provides discipline expertise. And the goal of the DAC Scientists Council is really to provide a forum for these DAC scientists to share their experiences with each other, give feedback to ESDIS, and work to support the science missions of their DACs, especially, and to make sure that the needs of science users are addressed as we evolve. Then the user needs team, which we are all part of, is each DAC has at least one user needs team representative who regularly responds to users' requests. And these representatives come together once a year in a technical interchange mission to identify the priorities for that year. And then there's a smaller, the Tiger team, which put together this session, that champions these needs to ensure that technical solutions are developed. And then another group that I wanted to go into detail with is the Airborne Field Data Working Group. This is comprised of ESDIS Management, the Airborne Data Management Group, ADMG, that some people might be familiar with, and all the DACs that work with airborne and field data. And together they collaborate to identify user needs of users who use suborbital data and determine the best way to collaborate and meet those needs. We've had 2 workshops, and one result of that is the Airborne and Field Data Resource Center, which is on Earth data. Other groups are the UI UX team, the convergence team. There's a whole lot. Next slide. And then as we're evolving, we don't just want to make sure that the DACs are involved, but also we want to know that we're going in the right direction for our users. So some of the ways that we get user feedback are our user working groups. Each DAC has a user working group, or UWG, and these members are regular users of the data and services of that DAC and experts in their scientific discipline. And as a group, they serve as subject matter experts and provide the DACs with insight and recommendations that help with planning and prioritizing at the DACs. We had a UWG summit in November, where at least one member of each of the 12 DAC UWGs participated in a 3-day meeting at Langley Research Center, and they discussed the concerns and priorities of their individual DACs. They provided feedback about existing and planned tools and services, and they participated in brainstorming breakout groups with the user needs representatives from the DACs. And then I know there's many people in our audience who've participated in ESDIS-WG. That's the Earth Science Data Systems Working Group that was established by, I have my date wrong in my notes, but by NASA headquarters. It's run by NASA, by the ESDIS program. And these working groups provide a venue for community members to contribute and give feedback to ESDIS, as well as other projects in ESDS. So I think I'm going to wrap up and let Jenny answer, lead the questions, the answers, and discussion.
Hi all, I just wanted to turn my camera on for a minute and say hello, I'm Jenny Hewson and I work primarily on NASA's near real-time data systems and also provide some support for user needs in ESDIS. So we had kind of a couple of areas that we really wanted to get feedback on. We have a couple of questions, but I wanted to see, first of all, before we put the questions up, if anybody has kind of initial feedback on what's been provided so far, and we can capture that first. And please don't be shy. This is all a friendly group, and we are really here to gather feedback, input, etc. So if anybody would like to come up off mute, or even if you want to pop comments in the chat, I'm happy to convey those.
This is Rama.
Hi, Rama.
I was looking at the attendance list and found that there are very few people who are not in the ESDS program supported environment. So that's slightly disappointing.
Yeah, that.
Because I think most of us know what's going on here, and it'd be informative if some of the other people were participating in the meeting.
Yeah, so we could, I think, pivot the discussion to the needs of the people who are here, if we wanted.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to remedy that situation in the meetings, but
yeah, that is a challenge. We were really hoping to get people who don't already know all this.
Well, even though I've been around for a long time, I did get some new items from here, so that's useful, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Sarah, one suggestion could be to ask, since primarily our ESDIS colleagues, kind of what are some of the things that they are seeing from users in terms of impacts. And I see Nazila, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Nazila Maradi. I'm from NOAA's NCEI, National Centers for Environmental Information. And as we are moving towards the cloud, first of all, I am super impressed by all the work that NASA's been doing. But NASA also has, you seem to be on the forefront of a lot of things. We are curious as to some of your training techniques and seeing how you've built up a community of practice using OpenScapes, and making sure that, everyone, if you may not think from your own thing, there may be chaos underneath, but from my 20,000 foot view, it looks really good. But I would love to know what some of your challenges are, how you're working within the different disciplines to maybe standardize some information about training, but then having, subject matter experts dive in. I don't know what you're doing so much, and I think myself and several of my colleagues at NCI would be very curious and very interested in talking to you about some of the things you're doing.
Thanks ever so much for that comment. And I think, Sarah, you were probably going to ask the same thing if any of our colleagues would like to comment.
I was going to say, do we have anyone who was involved in OpenScapes maybe in the room, in the virtual room?
Well, you had to drop off, but I think Anne might be able to speak.
Yeah, Julie jumped off, but I'm here. I don't know if my other colleague from the OBDAC is here, but we're both involved in OpenScapes.
So that's what you guys are using to do a lot of that. And I know that within NOAA, fisheries is very involved in using OpenScapes, and I think that's super important. How do you, is that part of the NASA culture in general, the data culture in general, building that kind of community of practice, understanding and sharing code, or understanding and putting together notebooks and things, or was that something you had to build up to?
I don't know that I can answer this very broadly. This is also my first time participating in an ESIP meeting, so I'm just getting to know the feel of this community. But I will say that I think the creation of data recipes and Jupyter notebooks and sort of like learning to benefit, learning the DACs, learning to sort of build on each other, it is a little bit new and sort of came along with the creation and funding of the OpenScapes program. I mean, that's been going for several years now. But it's been really influential, I think, for the DACs to get to share their work with each other on those fronts and building those communities. But I don't know how far it extends beyond the OpenScapes workers. I don't have a lot of experience with user working groups, however, and I bet they have a lot of similarities.
Okay, thank you.
Any other feedback for Nazila? And if not, I see another hand. Okay, thank you, Leslie.
Hi, sorry, I'm slow on the Zoom clicks. Visiting your session from USGS Science Data Management branch and very interested. Thank you for the overview. I had a couple questions. So my first one was, it was nice to see your forum that you stood up to help facilitate some of this evolution. And I didn't get a chance to like look at it too closely yet, but it seems to have pretty good participation from a quick glance. So I'm just wondering, like, how much do you need to shepherd, encourage that participation, or is your user group just large enough that you get a lot of activity here? And so that was the first half of the question. I'm also wondering if you needed some approvals for this completely open and nicely completely public forum to set that up. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Leslie. So the two questions are, how much is kind of the participation kind of facilitated or encouraged, and then is there an approval process? So and I'm going to ask my ESDIS colleagues to follow up on what I say. So I think it was initially rolled out amongst a subset of DACs, and then other DACs, also were moved into Earth Data Forum. And then I believe that users, I think they pose 3 questions, and then it is more of an open process. But those with more knowledge than me, please add to what I have just said.
I think everything you said was spot on, Jenny. But the other thing too that has happened is that each DAC has worked with their community to encourage them to participate in the forum, because you can often answer a question about a biogeochemical dynamics data product and answer a question unknowingly about an atmospheric data product. So each DAC continuously, with various different methods, encourages their communities to communicate through the forum rather than, we do communicate privately with users, but through the forum we can reach communities that might be, we might be prohibited from corresponding with directly due to, political reasons or whatever. So,
Thanks so much, Tammy. Any other initial questions, or should we move to the next slide? Oh, sorry, Leslie, is that a legacy hand or another question?
I put it up again. I was waiting to see if anyone else has a question and they raise their hand, I will let them go first to not monopolize.
I don't think we're risking you monopolizing, Leslie.
Okay.
Please, please
So
carry on.
my next question is very interesting and relevant for tool consolidation. I heard you said there were over, the presenter said there were over 90 tools. So I am aware of other efforts like this that have happened in different parts of the USGS, where they will like do this survey of what they have accumulated over the years, and there might have been some sort of rubric. So I wonder if you could share a little bit about when you're trying to align those 90 tools. Can you share anything about the considerations, or if there's some sort of rubric for prioritizing the alignment? Because I can imagine people who have been working on the tools, they'll have different opinions about which ones should be aligned, etc. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Leslie. I didn't see Patrick Quinn on this session. Am I correct, Tammy and Sarah?
He's not here, but I think maybe Doug, can you take that question?
Thank you.
If you could repeat that question, I would be very happy to answer it.
Okay, I am happy to repeat the question, which was, in the tool alignment of the many dozens of tools that currently exist, can you share anything about some of the criteria, or if there's a rubric for making those decisions on the tools?
I can, but bear in mind, I have not been directly involved in any of the consolidation of these tools yet. So what I'm saying is kind of a summation of what my colleagues have been doing in primarily transformation and search and discovery. Ingest and archive, MyTrain and platform haven't been involved in that too much yet, although there are some areas where we've contributed. So I see Tammy says she can. You can interrupt me anytime you like, Tammy, and take me off the hot seat here. But so one of the primary considerations is to manage costs, but in terms of resources. So where we see duplication of efforts in tooling, we're going to try and reduce those down to one tool and therefore cut down on the maintenance and operation costs. Some areas where we've seen that are transformation services and the transformation train. And we have peers, we have hype, we have harmony. A lot of those things have overlaps. So we did a study on the overlap between those three things and other transformation services that we have, involving all the DACs to try and ascertain how we could consolidate those, and the rubrics and criteria for those were part of that study. I don't have those to hand. Tammy, do you have those? Seeing as you said I can in the chat.
yes, because it was a very painful, in-depth exercise for
Well, if
search
you
and
could
discovery.
enumerate what the I think
So
there
there
was
were
a weighted matrix. 100. Well, you better start.
141 criteria that was filled out for each tool, each of the 91 tools. And then we went through a systems engineering exercise where we ranked each of those criteria and weighted them, and then went into an algorithm in a nice little Jupyter notebook that the result was a high ratio of tools that should be converged to. In other words, what we came out with was a list of core capabilities that we want to preserve and the tools with which those exist. And so then the next phase of that was we call those prime candidate tools. And then with everything that didn't fall in that list, we ran another algorithm to see where matches might be indicated. And so now we're kind of at the verification point with that proposed list where we're making sure the assessment lines up. It was painful, but it was way worth it, and we're looking forward to see what happens with that. And then the other thing that we were able to do in transformation services is we were able to agree on a single pipeline manager, which means in the core of our tool setting, we're going to have a single workflow manager, which is called Harmony, where the pieces and parts of all of our tools in the future will exist, meaning that all of these tools and services are available to users, and users can actually use the functionality that our tools use to build their own scientific workflows, if that makes sense. I'm going to be quiet now because I tend to get excited and go on and on about these activities.
So to summarize, Leslie, neither of us answered your question. What were those rubrics? I think the best way to sum it up is, given a number of tools that we think cover similar grounds, which one of those tools covers most of the functionality, and how easy is it to get the rest of the functionality that is required into those tools? And that's the trick, and that's that 100-odd capabilities that Tammy mentioned. That's the best way I can answer that question at the moment.
That was a nice summary, and I really appreciate all of the responses. It's very useful and helpful and helps for commiseration and all of that. Thank you.
Thanks again, Leslie. And one quick follow-up, Ram asked how many tools the 91 are going to consolidate to, and I don't think there's a good answer for that as yet. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the trick. I think it really depends on what we determine is functionality that we absolutely have to keep around, and what we could possibly drop. And from what I can tell, the latter category is quite small. So that would suggest either that we, unless one, and I think transformation covered a lot of the bases, with hype coming in second. So making sure that all the services that we provide right now are going to continue, and being very careful about if we drop any, about whether we drop functionality, it's certainly not going to be, I mean, how many tools did you mention, Tammy?
I think it was 140, oh, 91, wasn't it, altogether?
Tools. There were 141 different criteria that we evaluated those tools or ranked those tools.
How many tools were there? How many tools
I
were
think
there,
we
Tammy?
ended up with about less than a dozen tools that were convergence candidates. And then we tried to place the remaining 80-ish within those 12.
Yeah, so ideally it will be one. but realistically and practically, it may be more than that. But I would like it to be in the single digits, obviously.
So
Yeah, well, Rome wasn't built in a day, but 12 tools would be a significant improvement over 91.
where did the 141 criteria come from? Was that the user needs working group that put that down?
No, actually, it was a systems engineering activity where we got down into the nuts and the bolts of each function within the tool. For example, did the tool perform synchronously or asynchronously? The specific subsetting type services, you name it. It was purely from a technical perspective.
Where is the input from the user needs working group coming?
That is the current phase that we're working on right now, and Doug can help me out with this. What we're going to focus on in the next 3 months is the outputs from those two teams, transformation and search and discovery, being looked at by UI UX experts to figure out how to properly I'm sorry, I saw Doug's comment in the chat and stuttered a bit, properly move forward.
So I am the least qualified to talk on this subject amongst ISDIS because I've been somewhat removed from it. So everything I say here, don't take with a pinch of salt, but maybe seek some assurance from Vinny Inverso, Patrick Quinn, Valerie Dixon. I believe that most, as Tammy brought up, that this is the user input is the next step, but I can't say any more details than that, unfortunately. Apologies for that.
Well, thanks to both you, Doug and Tammy, for providing that providing those explanations. And I wanted to see, Jennifer, can you slide ahead 2 slides? So the next slide, this one, we want just back one, please.
Of course.
Thank you.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, thanks,
Okay,
Jennifer.
perfect.
Okay, so we wanted to kind of see if you have additional feedback on how ESDIS can ensure that the development, the kind of the evolution of ESDIS that Sarah laid out, how we can ensure that it is user-centered, and if you have suggestions on that. And I wanted to open the floor up again, both those in ESDIS and as well as we have a number of external colleagues, so it would be great to get your feedback and input as well.
So it was actually from this question's point of view that I was asking that question earlier about how are the user needs information being fed into this process of convergence of tools. That's one specific example. And I know the user needs working group has been around for quite a long time. So I was expecting that there would be a strong connection between the two activities.
So Ram, I will just add one comment to that at the user needs meetings that happened at ASDC in November, there was an entire day on tool convergence, and the UWG members did participate in that, and so there was feedback gathered on a host of different elements during that day. And would others like to comment as well? And then Leslie, I see your hand. Anyone else from ESDIS want to address Rama's question?
Well, each sprint during the demonstrations, as the teams are working on meeting that next set of user needs within the enterprise tools and services, the user needs group is going to participate in those bi-weekly demos to provide direct feedback to say, yes, this is on target, or, well, it's almost there, and so forth. What the user needs, representatives from the DACs are trying to do is to help the teams reach the suggestions that were made by the UWG participants before we present that information to them. So user needs is a piece of the puzzle, but we're still trying to figure out how best to engage them more continuously than we've done in the past.
Thanks very much, Tammy. I see Leslie's hand and then Ian's hand. And thank you.
Thanks. And thank you for humoring questions from someone who's still learning a lot about this. My comment / question is, in a lot of the projects I've been involved with or known of in the USGS, a small amount of them have had the ability to hire an actual usability specialist. There's like a few that are within the USGS federal workforce, and sometimes we work with contractors. And it sounds like you have a very robust user needs program, but I was just wondering, to what extent are you able to hire actual usability specialists to be leading those and working those in, working in the comments to the developers? Thanks.
Thanks, Leslie. Sarah, would you like to address that?
I could try. So while we don't have anyone who is necessarily hired as a usability specialist, many of the DACs have UI, UX, user interface, user experience experts, which I guess would qualify as usability specialists. We've recently stood up a group for cross-DAC UI, UX group, where these experts will be determining the best way to get user feedback, user experience, best ways to test what our if our user interfaces are appropriate. Tammy, you want to say anything else, or anybody else from ESDIS?
I think you summarized it. It's kind of like I said, we are trying, and we do have these people with this training available, but we're just now kicking that activity up, and we'll just maybe by summer, ESIP, we can provide you with more details.
I'd add that it's not just the DACs we are sourcing UI UX expertise from. It's EED2 as EED as well.
Yes.
Currently
Yes.
only EED3.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. I see Ian and then Rama.
Hi, thank you. I think maybe, just to follow up specifically on this question that's on the board right now about user-centered development, I think the way that a lot of software projects that, are being developed in the open, how they focus on user-centered development is by really legitimately using their issues board, making feature and bug tracking public, and then actively curating those lists and making sure that the public can see that development is happening and is addressing their concerns is really, really critical for helping the users know that development is being driven and responsive to them. And so I'm wondering whether ESDIS can help sort of spawn that attitude and that behavior for development in the tools and data products that the DACs deliver. Ways to make those issue tracking, make the development open, make the issue tracking open and earnest, so that users really see how much work is going on and that the DACs are being responsive, and ESDIS is being responsive to what users need in a very literal sense, because a lot of the users are pretty software savvy, and they understand how to contribute to open source and how open source development works.
Thanks very much for that comment, Ian. I have that noted. And Rama.
Yeah, I remember in the mid 1990s as EOSDIS was being developed, we had some paid individuals actually whom we used to call tire kickers, who were real science investigators who were asked to look at the things that were being developed and you try to use them and make recommendations for changes and suggestions. So that was a good approach at the time. I don't know if something like that is being considered today, but that worked well at the time.
Thanks, Rama. Any comments for Rama?
I think we are looking at how we can do that effectively and reliably, Rama. And maybe it's make use of some of the measures PIs or who have that ESDS WG requirement, or maybe it's work with the UWGs. But we are thinking about how we can get some tire kickers. I see Dave's hand.
Yeah. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Jenny. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I came in a little bit late, so I'm wondering if you can start over again. No, I'm just kidding. One of the things that we're doing with the All Hazards Consortium, which is a 501c3, they're a nonprofit. They serve the food, fuel, transportation, medical supply, logistics, utility, and energy sectors. We have been over the last 2 years working on providing them video updates, utilizing all sorts of data inputs, whether it's GeoCollaborate, whether it's NASA, whether it's NOAA, whether it's Worldview, or other types of data sources to explain what's going on and the impacts to transportation and critical infrastructure and things like that. We saw a real increase in the amount of accesses to our videos once we opened them up to the public before Hurricane Helene this past hurricane season. And I think we had about 500 subscribers from the All Hazards Consortium stakeholders there. But once we opened it up to the public, the subscribers grew to about 18,000. And we're getting millions of views on some of these video updates, particularly in hazardous situations. So one of the things that we've done is, try to say, how can we expand the data access quickly and get data that's relevant to things that are happening around the nation and around the world. And so I don't know if this is in your, potential bag of partnerships, but we're not a NASA contractor. We don't have any proposals that have been funded, but we'd be open if you have some support to work with you more specifically to identify what data is relevant, what data needs help, what data access is kind of tough for us. Because if data is tough to access for these updates, then we just ignore it. We don't use it because we don't have time to highlight it. But some of the NASA days have been great. I mean, when Puerto Rico lost their power for a couple days because of a transformer problem at a major utility, we used the Worldview data to show the night lights, and Puerto Rico was dark. And when Cuba went dark several months ago, we were able to show that with the night lights and the day-night band and things like that. So there's some good stuff, and we're getting more exposure. So if that is a goal of NASA and ESDIS to get more exposure from these kind of user groups rather than other researchers and investigators, or not rather, but if you'd rather focus on research or include operational type uses, it'd be good. Maybe we can have a conversation after ESIP.
Thanks very much, Dave, as always. Any feedback for Dave? Any additional comments, thoughts? before we move on to the next section? Okay. Well, thanks ever so much. I have a lot of the notes and comments captured. That was really helpful. And Jennifer, do you want to say a couple of words about the breakouts?
I do, and since I can't see the screen, I'm not sure if we have a larger percentage of end users in the virtual meeting space now than we did at the onset. So I guess my question to Sarah and everybody, do we want to approach the breakouts as we had initially planned, with smaller groups, being that the large majority of the folks in the workshop are kind of more internal to ESDS and ESDIS? Uh-oh, I can't hear that at all.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Now I can.
Okay. So it was you, not me. That's good. So I think that the questions we had for breakouts are still pretty relevant, if you want to show those. But we also were kind of thinking that it would just be that the breakout session prompts would be more there to spur discussion. So I think there is still an advantage in having some smaller groups, because not everybody is comfortable speaking in a larger group. So maybe we do that for 15 minutes or so, and then 15 minutes makes sense. Then we come back and wrap up, and maybe groups of about 6. Does that sound good? But I also want to request that as you all are discussing, please put notes in the notes document, because we are collecting information about what user needs are, what user experiences are, what our ideas, and I can compile this with the whole pile I have from the UWGs, from the UWG Summit, from the Airborne Field Data Working Group, from various other activities, and make sure that it is forwarded up the chain. So please take notes in the note document.
Yep, and then just a few, again, I can't only see the slide right now, but just a few additional comments. So what we want to do here is to really encourage a two-way conversation and dialogue within these smaller groups. We want you to think about the cloud, the unified Earth Data website, the forum, and streamlined tools, and think about those in the context of a data user's workflow, especially when we're thinking about our interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary data users. And so the plan is to have one person from the user needs Tiger team, or maybe someone from ESDIS, depending on, I'm not sure how many attendees we have right now, moderating the breakout discussions. And we can also help to capture notes from the conversations and discussion. We want you to think about, you should view these questions on the slide currently as a prompt, but we also want you to think about what tools or services might be lacking. Think about what common issues do users face when they are interacting with DAC services. And then again, getting back to the how can ESDIS, what are your ideas on how ESDIS can better cater to interdisciplinary users? And so I think with this, I need to stop sharing my screen to be able to participate in the breakouts here.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and stop sharing, just to let you all know, I've created 4 breakout spaces, and Zoom is going to randomly put you in the rooms. And Sarah, I think the leads on this session are pretty much broken up, but if you need to go into another room, just come back into the main room and I can put you in whatever room you want. And I have them listed open for 15 minutes.
Thanks, Patty.
Okay, here we go.
So I don't think we're going to have the breakout rooms report out because we only have 5 minutes. But please, please, please make sure you put any thoughts or feedback in the notes so we can consider them. I ended up taking notes on paper because I couldn't share my screen and take notes at the same time. But yeah, feel free to add any thoughts that have come up since the discussion. We want to encourage everybody to stay involved, and I know that half of you are already involved with ESDIS evolution as your job, but if you're not, then we would definitely appreciate your feedback as we are evolving. And if there's functionality you notice is missing, or something changes and you love it or you don't love it, feel free to reach out to the user needs Tiger team. Jennifer, can you share that slide, our last slide that has the Tiger team email on it? And then we will, as we figure out ways for people to participate, we will make sure that those are publicized at ESIP or with the DACs. And yeah, so keep giving us feedback. That's our takeaway. Anybody have any last things they wanted to say, as we are 3 minutes to 3? Someone in the chat? Okay, well, thank you everyone, and have a great rest of the, oh, Dave, your hand's up.
Yeah, sorry, I was just about to disconnect. So, but I did want to wanted to ask you, Sarah, what's your main, when you get user feedback, what is your main goal? Is it to serve the research base more? Is it to serve the applied sciences or Earth action side more? Or are they both about equal?
So traditionally, we have served the science users. That has been our job. But there's an increasing focus at NASA on Earth action. And we are definitely looking at how we can serve that community as well. We, of course, have to work with Earth action and applied science on that. Jessica, do you want to, I could put you on the spot on Earth action as well, if you're available.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What was the prompt here?
It was, how do we decide who we're evolving for, whether it's science users or Earth action? And it's really both, but our focus has been science users, but we are looking more towards Earth action as a priority, as that is kind of a NASA priority as well. But if you had anything additional to add.
No, Sarah, you're exactly right. I mean, while ultimately we need people to use the data, right? So those are our data users. Earth action really does emphasize improving the value, accessibility of NASA science and data to ultimate end users, so decision makers or folks on the ground. So
that's great. Thank you. I'm sorry I have to drop off, but maybe we can connect more during the meeting here.
Yeah. You know how to reach me, Dave. Feel free to reach out anytime. I just want to say thanks to everyone for participating. And see you at other ESIP sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.